First one was a very simple one. What do you think about this? Climber Dave McLeod on one of his YouTube videos said that overcooking meats reduces the vitamin C content. Does anyone know about this? Sorry, I can't remember which video. He seems well researched and knows what he's talking about. If true, what is meant by overcooked?
Cooking will deteriorate all nutrients and amino acids and so on and so forth. But what is it compared to? When we look at vitamin C from kale, for example, kale contains more vitamin C per 100 grams than citrus fruits. I think from memory, it's around 93, 94 milligrams per 100 grams. But these foods, or non-foods even, contain other compounds such as flavonoids, which block the absorption of the vitamin C within there, resulting in a diminished net protein utilization. And even cooking kale will reduce that 93 down to 20. So what are we comparing things to? So cooking will denature almost everything to a degree, but still, we're still left with more than an adequate amount of vitamin C to perform all of the processes that it needs to. I've been ketogenic for 11 years, of which 5 to 6 years have been carnivore. I'm still waiting to suffer with issues of scurvy. So it's, when it comes to vitamin C, we need to understand that vitamin C competes for absorption with glucose through the GLUT4 transporter. So when we live a lifestyle that involves low glycemic foods, low carbohydrate foods, then this competition is massively reduced. So the volume, as we reduce the volume of carbohydrate, our requirement for the vitamin C also comes down. So yes, cooking does denature, but all cooking does. This is why most meats should be cooked rare in regards to beef in particular, or even consumed raw, which I know you're a big fan of, Steve, in regards to the mincemeat or the ground beef. I've seen you munching some raw mince once or twice. So yeah, beef should be cooked as little as possible. We don't want to cook at a high temperature. I'm not a fan of cooking at extreme temperatures in anything, because this results in burning, which increases acrylamide, which is the compound that you've heard me mention a number of times that's found in coffee. And acrylamide is a known carcinogen and a neurotoxin. So this is why many remove coffee, for example, when we live a carnivore lifestyle. It isn't so much to do with the caffeine content, which is a problem, but it's more to do with the acrylamide. And cooking, barbecuing does the same thing. I'm not saying not to have a barbecue, especially if you have fantastic weather and feel the need to do so, because it's all about the rule and not the exception. So we're still consuming lots of nutritious meats full of vitamins and minerals and amino acids, so on and so forth. But try to cook at a low heat for a longer period of time. What I tend to do, I put my meat into a pan, I put the lid on top, and it will accumulate some moisture within there from its own heat, and it will cook in its own juices. I don't even add fats to cooking, and there's nothing wrong with doing so. You can add fats to cooking, but you certainly don't need to. But try not to burn. Burning is overcooked. Well done steak is, and again, I need to be careful what I say with this. I know lots of carnivores who thrive and they have their steaks well done, because they're still the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. But the more that you cook it, the more that those nutrients are going to be denatured. So try not to overcook, especially burn.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because Matthew's just a follow-up question. Does frozen meat, fish, lose vitamin C over time? And that's actually very unlikely. If it does, it's minor. And that's all. It's down to the water-soluble vitamins, actually, and minerals during the thawing process. So you might see, it's really so minor. It's so minor. I won't worry about that. Question on the school website. We'll go back to that. And then we've got Kate's one from a live person in the room. But this is a very interesting one because it's cholesterol, which always rears its ugly head. In a couple of weeks, I'm having a health check up at work. It's something the company offer. I know my cholesterol is going to be high. Can anybody list in simple terms all the parts like LDL so I have some information to back up my argument? Listening to Richard on Monday saying he wants his LDL to be higher. I don't want to be as long-winded, something like that. I'm paraphrasing there. Can I just say, one of the easiest things to say is that more people die of heart attacks with normal or low levels of LDL cholesterol. There is absolutely zero proof that high levels of LDL cholesterol cause heart issues. If you want to know what parts of your lipid profile, it's really simple. HDL, triglycerides, LDL, and maybe VLDL. And you can get into particle sizes if you're listening to this, Andrew. You can always email me and I'll send you all the LDL studies as well. Here we go. Richard has come to the forefront of technology with a screen share. So let's have a quick look at this.
Am I sharing the right screen, Steve?
Yeah, we can see that.
Cool. I got 3 screens in front of me, so I hope I'm sharing the right one. So this was a statement made on the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee in 2015 in association with the American Heart Association. They clearly state on their website that cholesterol is not a nutrient of concern for overconsumption, yet we are still told that it is. And I will keep this incredibly short, but I think it's always pertinent to repeat. Cholesterol is imperative for life. We cannot live without it. It's essential for cell formation, cell communication, nutrient absorption, nutrient transportation, the production of hormones. It's essential for healing, and it's essential for the immune system. We can't live without cholesterol. Every cell in the body is made of cholesterol. This is how we send signals from the brain through the body, through the myelin sheath, so on and so forth. So cholesterol is not the enemy. There's in a natural sense, there's no such thing as bad cholesterol. We're told that LDL is bad and HDL is good. HDL is good, but so is LDL, unless it becomes damaged. And what causes this damage is something called glycation and oxidation. Every LDL particle has something called an ApoB100 receptor, and this is a receptor site that allows access to the liver for recycling. So the liver will release an LDL particle. The LDL particle travels through the body, dropping off lipid cargo in order to heal and repair the body. This is what LDL does. That doesn't sound bad to me. Something that heals and repairs the body. This is what LDL does. Now, that little yellow strand on the left is the ApoB100 receptor. Those tags have been caused by glycation, and then when the strand becomes red, and this is purely for graphic purposes, but that shows oxidation. Glycation is caused through excess carbohydrate consumption, and oxidation is caused particularly through excess seed oil consumption and other things as well, environmental toxins and so on and so forth. But it's this glycation and oxidation that damage our LDL, causing them to become what's called pattern B. Pattern A LDL is healthy and heals and repairs the body. And a super simplistic way to tell with this is that, so there we are, that breaks it down. LDL, non-oxidized, non-glycated is pattern A. Pattern B is oxidized and glycated. And if we run through this simple format, we can tell what our LDL is predominantly. So triglycerides less than 0. In fact, that can be as high as 1. But 0.5 or lower, the better. And that will give us an indication that our LDL is pattern A. If our HDL is greater than 1.5, then fantastic. And if our triglyceride to HDL ratio, and what that is taking our triglyceride number, dividing it by our LDL figure, and if that's less than 1, then fantastic. And this is where most people who live a ketogenic carnivore lifestyle reside. We have healthy LDL, pattern A LDL. LDL is only a problem when it becomes glycated and oxidized. And just to reiterate the fact, it's excess carbohydrate consumption and vegetable oil consumption that does this. Now, if you can't remember that when you speak to the doctor, what I would say is ask the doctor why cholesterol is a problem, to which the answer will probably be, well, it causes heart disease. Well, ask them to show you the evidence. Ask them what the mechanism is and ask them to show you the evidence, because it doesn't exist and they don't understand. And if they can't show you the evidence, then, that's your point proven. But this is the evidence. Study after study after study. This is a big famous study published on the British Medical Journal. This paper covers over 68,000 participants and shows an inverse association representing 92% of the participants. In other words, the higher your LDL, the lower your risk of death, and vice versa. So it's the lower your LDL, the higher the risk, if we look at it the other way. So we want high LDL. This is a massive study representing 92% of the participants. This is another one covering over just under 2,500, and this is another covering just over 9,000. And this one, the Minnesota coronary artery experiment, took place in mental hospitals in America between 68 and 73. And this was carried out in an environment in which everything was clinical, i.e., there was no external interference. This was carried out in mental hospitals, to which they had full control. This wouldn't be deemed ethical in today's standards, so we're quite lucky to have this. But basically what it shows is that when they replaced saturated fats for vegetable oils, risk of heart disease increased massively. And that's it in simple terms. Cholesterol has been wrongly demonized for a very long time, since the 1950s, done so by a scientist called Ansel Keys, who believed that saturated fats caused cardiovascular disease. It's been proven that he was bribed to falsify that research. It's been documented many times by establishments such as the New York Times. The Sugar Association, Nestle, Kellogg's, Coca-Cola paid him the sum of, or an equivalent sum of $50,000 in today's money, in order to remove the research that actually showed the opposite. So when he carried out this research, which was originally the 21-country study, 14 countries showed that high saturated fat consumption was healthy. So he removed those and only left the remaining 7, and then dubbed that study called the 7-country study, which showed that all of those studies he referenced showed a correlation of high saturated fat intake and cardiovascular disease. In short, now this is available in much more detail on Stephen's channel and my channel. I've got a fantastic 15-minute video on cholesterol in particular, which will break it all down. But cholesterol is essential for life, is the takeaway. We can't live without it. We don't want to be blocking our body's ability to do so. Consuming statins, for example, will partially block something called the mevalonate pathway. The mevalonate pathway is a shared pathway which allows us to produce ketones and produce cholesterol, but that shared pathway also allows us to create ubiquinone, or coenzyme Q10, which allows us to create DNA. So taking a statin prevents us from producing and creating DNA effectively. It also causes damage to the brain, Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's, and in fact, many professionals within that space who work with Parkinson's and dementia patients, the first thing they do is remove the statins from them because it's blocking that mevalonate pathway. And that's not medical advice. Stephen and I can't give medical advice, but those are the facts. So spin those any way that you like.
We can give the facts, and Andrew is in the room. So thank you for posting on school, and also thanks for turning up for the live. So that's really good. So we can now go to the live questions. Kate's iPhone. Hi guys, my glutathione test was a DNA Life Code GX test saying I don't have the gene. I can take a supplement, but was hoping Carnivore would help me to detox anyway. Have high inflammation, struggle detoxing mostly sugar. So Carnivore is helping, I think, with lots of gut issues. Thank you. I think that's just a comment, really.
Yeah, so we covered this last week, Steve, didn't we, in regards to the question that we bounced back was what made Kate think that she wasn't or was lacking the ability to produce glutathione, or the glutathione gene. So look, I mean, we did cover this a little bit last time. There are a lot more antioxidants within the body, you know, vitamin E being one, vitamin A, so on and so forth. You know, there are hundreds of antioxidants. Glutathione is just the master. But BHB will perform an antioxidant effect and allow the upregulation of all of these systems, enzymes, and pathways anyway. I don't think that taking a glutathione supplement is going to help if you're lacking the gene, and I may be wrong. but it just seems counterintuitive. Living the lifestyle will certainly help, especially with the gut issues, and it will definitely help with the inflammatory responses, which is probably, if you were removing the stimulus or the toxins in the first place, then your body needs to not detox as much, if you think of it that way. So if you were not consuming poisons every day, which is essentially what we were doing when we're consuming lots of seed oils and sugars, then our body can detox a lot more efficiently. I don't know if you have any recommendations further on that, Steve, in regards to supplementation of glutathione, but I would be thinking if you didn't have the gene, then supplementing could cause problems, because that's going to throw out the glutathione ratio within the body, maybe negatively affect methylation and so on and so forth. I don't know what your thoughts are, but I would be inclined not to supplement and rely on the other pathways.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, if we can make the environment not in need of antioxidants in the first place, then it's less of an issue. If you look at the roots, if you look at why glutathione is important to people, it's because it's an antioxidant. It reduces oxidative stress, which is, the flip side of the same coin, really. So I wouldn't worry about supplementing. I would just carry on doing what we're doing and reduce your ability to have oxidative stress in your body. I mean, that's really that simple.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think when you biohack, you start to get too obsessed with the ins and outs, and the body is really smart. It can adapt. You can cut I mean, I know it's off this topic, but it shows the ability of the body. You can cut 70% of the liver out of somebody and it will regrow in 6 months. So it's pretty good at dealing with damage or problems or mutations, genetic mutations. And I think, just keep eating this way. Gemma has shared, she did speak last week about bloating, and she hasn't been able to strip it back as much as she'd like, simply due to financial issues and having to buy cheaper items. I still plan to do this, but the bloating has worsened and it's really quite uncomfortable and disheartening. Still not going to give up, as I've had snippets of how beneficial this lifestyle can be, but it is challenging to cope with. Right, so here's some free things, Gemma. Just it sounds very patronising. It really isn't meant to be. Just chew your food. That's the first thing, right? Just eat a bit slower, because that's going to help with bloating, and you're going to swallow less air. Really, really easy thing to do. Don't have sparkling water. So again, that's something that your body, if you put carbonated water into your body has to process that carbon, right? So that's sort of a free thing that you can do. You can look at having more meals with smaller volume. I know Matthew's put some supplements in there for sort of your stomach acid and those sort of things, but I'm doing things that are completely free. So chewing slowly. Before you eat, do a little bit of activity, even if it's just walking around the house. And then afterwards, just walk for about 20 minutes. And that will get the motility of your small intestine. So you have this thing called peristalsis, which is about 11 waves per minute, which pushes food through. You can help that by moving around, not slouching, all these sort of things. I'm trying to give you a couple of bits that are free. More frequency of meals and less volume is definitely one. Don't drink any fluid with your meal. Don't dilute your stomach acid or what's going in, which might seem like a good thing to do, but it isn't actually. So let your stomach acid do its work. Take your time, let it empty. If you're eating with a knife and fork, put something in your mouth and put the knife and fork down and chew it. Just physical, free things that you can do that will help the mechanical digestion. It will help the salivary glands will break down food more. So when it hits your stomach, it's already a bit pre-digested, a bit smaller. Try not to stress over this. And I just can't stress enough, doing those things might give you a little push. Yes, you're buying cheaper items like chicken, but chicken isn't that bad. And even if you're worried about fat, and this really, really surprises people, actually, when you look at a chicken breast, believe it or not, when you look at the total volume of it, except for the water, it's 23% fat. There is some fat in a chicken breast. So even if you think, well, I've got to add fat, well, maybe you don't have to. So if you're eating chicken and you find that troublesome, It could be the fact that you're adding butter or some sort of dairy to it, which you don't need to do. So even though it looks lean, it might have enough fat for you. So I think those sort of things you can consider. And all of those are free to you. So hopefully that's helpful. I know Rich would probably have, much more advice to give as well. But that's what I would do. If I can't do anything money-wise, I would do those things.
Yeah, I agree. I think chicken can cause problems with some people. This is why, last week we recommended maybe removing chicken and going to beef. Mm-hmm. I understand beef is expensive, but chicken is not as nutrient dense and as good for the body as beef or lamb. But there are ways that you can buy it cheaper. Mincemeat is a lot cheaper, especially the higher the fat percentage. If you go to the butcher, you should be able to buy it cheaper again. If you befriend your local butcher, I'm sure you can buy in bulk like I do. I'll go to my local butcher once a week with £60, and that will feed me for well over a week. And I eat a lot of meat. I probably eat over 1 kilogram of meat per day. But because I spend 60 quid instead of just going to buy 1 or 2 steaks, he looks after me, and I get a lot more bang for my buck. Cheaper cuts to go for also would be top rump. Top rump is the cheapest cut. The next cheapest cut is chuck steak, also known as casserole steak. You can slow cook this, but I love to pan fry. Once we start going into the sirloins and the ribeyes, which is, we're told by the Americans to consume, which is fantastic, and they are brilliant, but they are expensive in the UK. Top rump and chuck are considerably cheaper, especially if you buy in bulk. If you buy half a joint, for example, you may get 10 to 15 steaks for £40 to £60, and that would be enough to last you all week. So yeah, a couple of options there, but minced beef is also a fantastic source. I know we mentioned cutting out eggs. Eggs are a great source as well of nutrients, but again, ideally we want to be gravitating towards the beef and lamb. But I find this way of living a lot cheaper. My shopping bill used to be around £150 a week, and now it's 50 to 60 or 40 to 60 even, because all I buy is meat. I don't buy from the supermarket. I buy all mine from the local butcher. And again, if I went to the butcher and asked for 1 steak of this and a tray of this and this much, it would be a lot more expensive. But if you befriend your butcher and tell them, look, I'm going to be back every week, I'm going to spend 40, 50, 60 pounds with you, what can you do to look after me? I think you'd be surprised. And if they can't, go to a different butcher.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also shin beef, which is actually really inexpensive and pretty good. You can look at heart.
Organ meats.
Yeah, organ meats, which are actually quite cheap, and then you don't need much of them. Fish, Morrison's do bassa fillet, 200 grams for, I think it's £1.60. So 1 meal for £1.60. There you go. So, right. Let's go on to the next one, which is really handy after what we just talked about. Lisa is asking, what is the longest period of time we can safely leave cooked meat in the fridge? Concerned about bacteria and histamine issues.
Do you have any stats on that exactly, Steve? I mean, I've got my tests, but it's nothing scientific.
No, mine are not scientific. Mine are my eyes and my factory nerves. So if you look at it, how do you store it? Well, firstly, I store it in glass, like Tupperware, but I mean, that's a good thing. So sadly, it's got a plastic top on it. Can't have everything. But I literally, if I've got a steak, firstly, if I don't eat the whole steak, unusual though that may be, I don't then cut it up and leave it in the Tupperware. I leave it as one whole piece because then there's less surface area. So then I would put that in the fridge. Now, the next day, I would expect that to be okay, to be honest. And I would look at it, and if you open the tub and you're like, whoa, no. Your olfactory nerves really is actually about 80% of your taste sensation. It's there for a reason. If something smells bad, it'll stop you eating it. So if it smells all right, in general, it's going to be okay. You could then slice it up, and the chances of it actually being worse once you slice it up is zero. Because the problem is the outside with the bacteria, and I says the inside will be okay. So even if you did that, it might look better actually if you just cut around the edge and slice it up and think, well, I'm not 100% certain about these bits that are around the edge, but the middle certainly looks really good. So there's that way. I don't think we could even tell you a particular time, because that would definitely relate to, you know, your fridge, the temperature you have your fridge, other things that are in your fridge. Because if you have, you know, lots of things in a very big fridge, the lifespan is different to if you have a small fridge with one thing in it. So 2 days is a rough guide. I think I would probably say 2 days would be about the most. But the reason I'm saying that is because nothing lasts longer than 2 days, because I tend to eat it. But that's what I would do. I would eyeball it, I would smell it, and if it looks good and it smells good, I'd go for it. And also, actually, when you start to cook, you get a different smell. And when you start cooking it, you think, that doesn't smell right, then I would abandon it as well.
Yeah, I agree. Aged meats are not as good for us as we are led to believe. When you go to a nice restaurant and they have 28-day aged, mature, and then 48 or so, and we think, all right, let's go for the aged meat. Aged meats contain higher levels of histamine. We don't want aged meats. We want fresh. What I do when I go to the butcher once a week. I'll buy a lot fresh. I'll take it home. I'll take out 2 days worth, and I'll pop that into the fridge. The rest will go into the freezer. And then as I'm consuming the beef from the fridge, or the lamb, more is coming out of the freezer, going into the fridge, and it's defrosting. So I've always got 2 days worth of food in the fridge. If I think food is coming to end of life, I will cook it, because it will last longer when it is cooked. And again, 2 days for me is probably, again, it doesn't last 2 days, but 2 days for me is probably about right. But that's what I do. I store it in the freezer. I pull it out on a daily basis. I let it defrost in the fridge. I have 2 days worth of supply in the fridge, and then when it's cooked, I keep it for a max of 2 days. But generally, it doesn't last that 2 days. But I agree. Look and smell. This is why we have those receptors. I use the same when it comes to cheese. And yes, I still consume cheese. I'm a massive lover of cheese. Cheese works really well for me. When I open cheese, I'll chop that up. I'll wrap it back up. If I go in and it starts to go a little bit thinner on the edges, I'll do exactly as you say, Steve. I'll chop the edges off, and I'll consume the little, the rest in the middle. But yeah, that's what I would go with. I agree.
Cool. On the same wavelength for ever such a lot, which is good. I suppose because we're both clever. Anyway, right.
Or not, one or the other.
Oh, yeah, both equally as stupid. You could say that as well. Right. Elisa's asking, and I think already Matthew's answered this, but we'll say it. If we cannot get Redmond sea salt where we live, how do you choose a good quality sea salt? What should we look for? I mean, he's put Celtic sea salt, which is what I use, but also there's Morden sea salt, which I think is pretty popular and easy to get. Anything else, Rich?
Yeah, Celtic is going to be number one. Celtic is microplastic free, other sea salts, and they've been tested. There's a specific brand of Celtic sea salt. I can't remember what it is, but I've just started stocking it for the Real Food Company. It's microplastic free. It's the only one that's been tested has been 100% microplastic free. Others are still good. When it comes to salt, I think we get too hung up on different types of salts. All salt's going to confer a benefit. The difference with and that it is the confer a benefit. The pink Himalayan is it doesn't come from the sea. It isn't organic. So it comes from rocks and so on and so forth, where the sea contains more. It's more made from organisms, and it's a lot better for you in regards to nutrient content. But it doesn't mean that the pink Himalayan isn't going to confer that benefit. Salt is better than no salt. But as we gravitate deeper into the lifestyle, we start to go deeper down that rabbit hole, and we start to pull these other levers, the other 1% and 2%. Celtic sea salt is going to be the best one for you. And that's the one I would always preference over anything else. Second to that would be a sea salt. And then, third to that would be a rock salt. But salt, is always going to confer a benefit, but Celtic sea salt for me is going to be number one.
Excellent. Lisa, any idea why I belch sometimes when I drink water? This can even occur first thing in the morning when my stomach is completely empty, which is a little clue that, you know. Anyway, is there something that I should be looking to try to address or not worry about? No, you shouldn't be belching when you drink water. Just going back to what I said earlier, drink slowly. Don't gulp water, because one of the biggest problems will be taking in excess air, which is something then you will have to process. Your body has to process it. So take your time. Try and drink from glass like this. Don't drink through a straw, because that allows more air to go in. Those sports drink things, for some people, are like a straw. It's problematic. That can add more air as you're drinking through that. So if you can drink from a glass, simple. That's the best thing. The empty stomach, avoid sparkling water if it's a problem for you. By the way, let's make this clear. This is only if you're having a problem drinking water and belching. If you do those things, you use a straw, use a thing that you take to the gym, and you're fine. Don't worry about this. But if you're having problems, carbonated beverages can be a problem. If it's first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, you could have a little bit of bacterial overgrowth. I doubt it very much with this way of eating. But just to broaden it out, that can be a sign, by the way, if you're worried about that. But I do feel it's the same thing. Make sure you're not gulping it. Make sure you take your time. Don't drink it in too big an amount. Just drink to thirst. Just sip it. You know, I see people glugging and glugging and glugging, and then, you know, walking around the gym and like that. And you just want to say to my buddy, you're just making life difficult for yourself. Take your time. Anyway, right, that's my 2 pence.
That's another one of mine. We should do a book, shouldn't we, of our sayings?
Yeah. Have you got anything to add, or have I covered that?
Yeah, no, fantastic. I think we've covered that there. Yeah, do you guys have any other questions, or are there any other questions on the school group, Steve?
No, we've done everything, which is great. You've really got good at this, Rich.
I think we've had a little bit of practice, haven't we, over the last couple of years?
We have.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, Gemma's given us a round of applause, so we could wrap up for the day, as there's no questions, which is really good. Although she's got a question. She's got her hand up. So, Gemma.
Sorry, I was meant to raise my hand.
We'll take the applause, it's fine.
I know you've spoken about this a few times in regards to the electrolytes and the possibility of taking too many. So I'm quite active. I go to the gym like 4 or 5 times a week. And I take the flavoured electrolytes, probably about 2 scoops every day. Does that sound about, and obviously everyone's different and things like that, but does that sound about okay?
So let's put it into perspective. I probably consume around 10 scoops per day. You don't need to consume that many. But my point is that you can, and you'll be perfectly fine. We're told to fear salts. We're told that anything over 1.5 grams of salt or 1,500 milligrams is detrimental to our health. But when we look into the studies that look into this, there's a study that I referenced that covers over 100,000 participants over 17 countries, and it shows an inverse association. And basically what this study shows was that we need closer to 4,000 to 6,000 milligrams, and some people even 10,000 milligrams of sodium per day. And I'm one of these people who needs more, towards the 10,000 milligrams. The body is incredibly intuitive, Gemma. Listen to the body. If you feel like you need salt, you know, for example, when you have your meal, sometimes you add salt, sometimes you don't, sometimes you add a lot, sometimes you add a little. And you do this intuitively because your body's telling you that it either needs salt or it doesn't. So use it the same way. Some days, you know, if you feel like you don't need to drink the electrolytes, then, you know, you don't need them. If you feel like you're craving them, then put the salts in. Sugar cravings can sometimes also be mistaken, or salt cravings can be mistaken for sugar cravings. But it's incredibly difficult to consume too many in regards to electrolytes. Electrolytes are essential for life. We can't live without them. We can obtain much from our diet, but today's diet is very different to the way that we would have evolved. Stephen and I covered this on the live, I think it was last night or last week, I can't remember. Every day's melded into one. Our life would have looked a lot different as we were evolving. We would have consumed every part of an animal. That includes the organ meats. It includes the knuckles on the bones. It includes the connective tissue on the bones. We would have crushed the bones and eaten the marrow and everything that was contained inside. We don't do those things anymore. We would have stripped the animal. The meat would have been, on the rocks, gathering salt. We don't do any of those things. We buy everything in packets from the supermarket, which has had, lots of the parts of the animal removed. So this is why, today in modern society, we are heavily devoid of these essential electrolytes. You don't have to supplement with electrolytes. You can obtain enough in the diet. In most cases, Anthony Chaffee, for example, doesn't need electrolyte supplementation. But then the flip side, if you look at Sean Baker takes electrolyte supplementation because he's super active. He trains every day. He's a world record rowing holder, I think, with the Guinness Book of Records, Steve, isn't it?
Yep.
So he's super active. He uses electrolytes because his requirement is a lot higher. Dr. Chaffee doesn't train as much as he used to. I think when we spoke to him in the PHC, I don't think he trained for 3 or 4 months, he said. So his requirement for, electrolytes are a lot lower. So when we speak about electrolytes, it isn't a sales pitch. They are essential. Some people need more than others. And you've hit the nail on the head, but 2 scoops, it isn't a lot. I certainly wouldn't be concerned with overconsumption with that. Just listen to your body. If you can function on less, even better. If you need more, don't be afraid to put more in. I just drink it intuitively. I love drinking the electrolytes when I add it to water. I'm a fan of the unflavoured. Most are not, because for many, they do taste absolutely disgusting. And I've put this warning on the website also for the unflavoured so people can see. And I've clearly highlighted it. Read this, or please read. Which states that the electrolytes contain astaxanthin, which is the world's most powerful antioxidant, if not the only true antioxidant. But it does add a fishy taste, and it gives this salt or fish taste to the electrolytes, which many can't stomach. But I drink them. I like the taste, but I do love the flavoured electrolytes. I find them incredibly refreshing, especially in the gym. So look, don't be concerned. Just adjust to taste, and you don't even need to put the full scoop in. Sometimes you may find a quarter of a scoop is enough. Sometimes it's half a scoop. Just adjust to taste. Does that make sense, Gemma?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you. And I just want to say as well that I really appreciate your products, because I know you've probably feel a bit damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I really appreciate it, and I'm really grateful that there's something like that out there to buy. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Gemma. Yeah, and you're right. That means a lot. It's the unflavoured electrolytes I brought to the market because everybody within the carnivore community wanted something that was more elite and free of stevia. And the majority of the feedback is that they can't drink it because they're disgusting. And now they've gone back to consuming the one that contains the stevia. Which is incredibly disconcerting. There is a small market for them, and I'm sure that will continue to grow. But it's, I think they're fantastic. I know there are a couple of others in the group who drink the unflavoured and love them. But it's certainly an elitist product, isn't it, for sure? But there's nothing. We also covered this yesterday, Steve, in regards to the sylvatic response with stevia and the insulin and glucose response. It is negligible in most people. If it doesn't cause any problems with me, it doesn't cause any problems with most people. And it's all about these. It's all about the rule and not the exception. If it takes a little bit of stevia in your electrolyte, to allow you to consume it because you can't consume the unflavoured, then so be it. There are far worse sweeteners on the market, and we listed some of those yesterday. So even some of the other electrolytes on the market are more sugar than they are water. If you look at the volume of sugar in there, they contain more sugar than they do electrolytes. So they're not even electrolyte formulas. They're sugar formulas. And the ones that contain no sugar contain maltodextrin, which causes a higher insulin response. It's higher on the glycemic index than sugar is. So it's, even though there's no sugar in there, it causes a more severe response than consuming sugar does. So it's there's a lot of nasties out there, Yeah, but I appreciate that.
Yes, it's well said, Gemma. And also we got Matthew with his hand up, and Lisa asked a question in the chat first, and we'll make these the last two questions because I know Rich is always pushed for time. Lisa is saying it's two-part. Why is it said that we should consider taking electrolytes when we first start carnivore for a while, but we can stop taking them later? How do we know when we can stop taking them?
Awesome question. Fantastic. So, and I will keep this super simple. When we begin a low-carb ketogenic journey, insulin drops. This is why it's an ideal lifestyle for reversal of type 2 diabetes. I used to be type 2 diabetic. I reversed mine through living this lifestyle because I removed the compounds that are causing that insulin resistance. Namely two items, seed oils, which cause more insulin resistance than sugar does, and the second being sugar or carbohydrate. Now that we've removed these, insulin, and we can see this in blood testing, literally begins to drop overnight. And we can almost reverse, or in fact, we can reverse technically a diabetic state within as little as 2 weeks through insulin. And we can see this dropping over a period of 2 weeks. Now, insulin is what pulls sodium back into the blood from the 4 points in the nephrons in the kidneys. So when we consume salt, high insulin pulls the sodium back into the blood through those 4 points in the nephrons in the kidneys. Wherever salt goes, water follows, and this leads to high blood pressure or essential hypertension. So anyone who suffers with essential hypertension or normal high blood pressure, it's caused through insulin resistance. So when we begin a low-carb journey and we remove the seed oils, insulin drops. Now it signals the kidneys to release the sodium from the body. Now, sodium is an electrolyte, as is potassium and magnesium, and these are essential for life. Now that sodium's been flushed out of the body, we don't have any in the body to perform these functions. Electrolytes, think of them as things that charge your batteries. They're electrically charged minerals that allow your body to carry out most of its work. So we can't live without it. So now the sodium's been flushed out of the body, your batteries don't work the way they should. So you start to feel lethargic. You get brain fog. You may get headaches. You feel really shitty, to be honest. Let's put it out there. And this is why most people throw the towel in. They've gone low carb, and now they start to crave things. They feel absolutely awful, and this is why they end up putting carb back in. And then this elevates the insulin, but this pulls the sodium back in, so it leads back to this insulin resistance. But now you feel better because you've got sodium back in the body. So this is why we need to supplement in the initial phases in particular. You can do this by salting your meals. Again, Celtic sea salt is preference, or you can take an electrolyte. This will allow you to negate the negative effects of what's called the keto flu, or was once known as the Atkins flu. But it's to do with this drop in insulin, which is a good thing. As the body adjusts, this level begins to increase. The body begins to utilize the sodium again over time. So your requirement for it may come down, and it may even completely dissipate. And as we said, Anthony Chaffee, for example, doesn't consume electrolytes. His body's fully adapted. He's been carnivore for most of his life. So I believe that he was never in this insulin-resistant state, so therefore he never needed to supplement with electrolytes. I came from a state of high insulin. I was incredibly unwell, type 2 diabetic, severely insulin-resistant. So my body needed these as I put them back in. And I find now that I function way better with them. But many people find that they can come off them. So they may just even be a segue. But they are essential, I believe, in the initial phase. And this is why I think it's pertinent to put them in, especially in the early days. How can you tell? Simply by reducing. So start consuming less, but do it gradually. Don't just stop consuming the electrolytes, because this could lead to that negative downstream effects again of feeling lethargic, brain fog, and so on and so forth. So start reducing the electrolytes either by volume, i.e. the amount that you consume per serving, or reduce the servings throughout the day and see how you feel. But keep salt in the meals as you're doing so, just to make sure. And you may even be able to come off salt in the meals over time. And there are many people within the carnivore community that don't even salt their meals anymore. But do so gradually, which is the same thing that we would be doing with oxalates as well, which is something that I had a conversation with somebody before I came on this in regards to oxalate detoxing. And I think it may have been a question actually on the school chat, Steve, unless I'm just dreaming. But it's a similar thing with oxalates. In regards to oxalate dumping, we need to reduce the amount of oxalates that we're consuming rather than just, stopping them dead. So ease off over time is the simple answer.
Well, that was the short answer.
It's the short
answer. Richard is doing a 24-hour live stream just on that answer. You're right. Matthew, what is your question, sir?
Okay, so with Richard's bodybuilding history and experience and Stephen's personal training experience and bodybuilding experience, I was wondering if either of you had any benefits with isometric training with yourself or with clients.
Steve?
Well, you go first because you are the man.
So for me, the benefits came from, we've had a couple of chats of me in regards to maximizing hypertrophy. I found that concentrate on eccentric movements in the rep ranges that we've discussed of maximized benefit. You're going to see a benefit regardless of what you're doing. But all of the science for me leads to that, to the ones that we've discussed previously.
Yeah. I mean, my favorite isometric exercise is dead hanging. And my least favourite is planking. In fact, I wouldn't even plank. I don't recommend planking because it's very bad for your lower back. So I think the reason I use those two examples is because there's good and bad in everything when it comes to exercise. It depends on what you're trying to achieve. But I feel the muscle is there to contract, and elongate. But I do feel you can't really beat dead hanging. Actually, if you was to do one exercise, could nothing else, I would dead hang, because I think that's just so good for your overall kinetic chain. It's good for your grip strength. It's good for your back, good for your shoulders. It's good decompression as well. Your strength is there, endurance. It's got everything. But you need more than one exercise because there's no locomotion. And that's the other thing. So I think it's got its place, but I don't think, if you're doing a bicep curl, what does a bicep do? Well, a bicep actually, it's a lever. It moves your forearm. That's what it does. So really, that's a perfect exercise. But yeah, I can understand, if you're doing a farmer's walk and you're carrying your dumbbells like that, that's not bad. But I wouldn't say it's the best thing to do. The worst thing, I just think it's something you can add into the mix.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just interested in your opinions because, as I say, I'm doing personal training, a course at the moment, and I was sort of thinking how to implement that, perhaps maybe for older people, or perhaps they could go to concentric failure and negative failure if they're advanced, and then maybe do like a static contraction where they hold the mid-range at the end. So say someone does some pull-ups or chin-ups and they can't do any more reps, they could then just dead hang straight after doing a pull-up or chin-up. Or a bicep curl, they could do normal curls and then literally just hold it in the mid-range position for as long as they can, because that's generally the strongest part of the movement, because they've worn out all the other aspects of the range of motion, but they've still got strength there. Yeah, so it's an advanced technique. I mean, you wouldn't do that for beginners. You just do concentric failure if they can sort of get there. Yeah, but for advanced training, I'm just thinking that perhaps that could be help someone for a plateau maybe as well.
Well, it can, but then, don't forget I've got 15 years of rehab, so I've seen lots of bad knees. Well, if you do a wall sit, you're doing that to your patella tendon, whatever you want to call it, because it's got different names. I mean, the idea of that, where your kneecap is embedded, is the end of your bone is supposed to be super, super smooth, like the white bit on a chicken. So when you do a wall sit, you're actually pushing that. It's a motion. The knee is a motion. It's not supposed to be still and push like that. So I think, like wall sit, I've been in the gym and I've seen beginners given wall sit, and it's awful for the knees. And that's what I'm saying is there's a time and a place for certain exercises, but I would go from what does the joint do, and is this going to impact the joint in a negative way? Whereas the dead hang is certainly a good thing because it elongates and stretches the joint capsule. Something like wall sit pushes the knee and pushes, let's get very basic. Your thigh bone is pushing against your kneecap, which is exactly what it shouldn't be doing, because it should be, when you do exercise, do soft knees. Well, why do you do a soft knee? Because it looks like that. And then you're going to say, well, we're going to do this now. We're going to really push the very thing we've been saying don't do. We're going to really now push it deliberately for 30 seconds against a wall. So, yeah, sorry, it's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine because I did rehab, and people will do that and come and say, well, actually my knees hurt after I did wall sit. And it's good for me when before the restrictions, I used to do a lot of business with rehab and knee problems, and that would be one of the big exercises that cause problems. But then you can get a great movement everyone else seems to like, which is the lateral raise for the shoulder. Well, that causes impingement on so many people. I wouldn't do it. Even if you do really good form, by the way, even if you do the tipping out the water thing, that's actually worse. So when you bring your arm up, it's better to actually bring your thumbs up towards the ceiling, because then what you're doing is a natural motion. And this is a bit too technical, I think, for everybody who's really just talking about carnivore. But there's a lot to it. Maybe we'll do a special just about exercise.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm still a big fan of eccentric over concentric, especially for damage limitation, and that's what I would adopt for the elderly over concentric. Is I think we just lift too much on concentric movements, and we're stronger on eccentric, but the weights become lighter. But yeah, I think we can cover this on a different one, can't we? But maybe we should do an entire different podcast on this one, Steve.
Yes, but great question, Matthew. It's a really good question.
Right.
We will wrap up, and this will be available on a playback. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Your support means the absolute world to me, and if you're enjoying this show, I've got a small favour to ask you. I'd be incredibly grateful if you would consider becoming a supporter and make a small monthly donation. Your contribution will really help to improve the show. I'll be able to improve the software, maybe put a few more episodes out, and do many things that I'm hoping to do in the future. Do them a lot quicker. So, it's a small monthly contribution. You can cancel at any time, and the link is in the show notes. Thanks very much for listening.